One email, that's all it took. No hacking Hollywood makes it look like, no masked figure typing in a dark room. Just one email that looked exactly like every other email a business owner gets in a day. It took federal investigators years, 3 trials, and cooperation from agencies across the country to finally unravel what that one email turned into. Over $200 million stolen from more than 1,000 victims in 47 states across this. This is the story of one of the largest business email fraud schemes ever prosecuted in the United States. For years, investigators followed a trail of suspicious bank transfers, fake invoices, and stolen identities. What they eventually uncovered wasn't the work of a single hacker. It was a highly organized criminal network operating across multiple countries. The scheme targeted businesses of every size. Small companies, large corporations, law firms, manufacturers, and real estate agencies all became potential victims. The criminals didn't need to break down firewalls or deploy sophisticated malware. Instead, they relied on something much more powerful: trust. By the time federal authorities brought the case to court, more than 1,000 victims had lost over $200 million. And for many businesses, the damage went far beyond the money. The scam at the center of this case is known as Business Email Compromise, or BEC. Unlike many cyber attacks, BEC doesn't rely on malicious software or dramatic hacking techniques. Instead, it depends on deception. The attackers make their emails look legitimate. They may impersonate a company's CEO, a trusted supplier, an attorney, or even a longtime business partner. To the person receiving the message, everything appears normal. The email address looks familiar. The writing style seems convincing, and the request often feels urgent. Most victims believe they're simply following a routine business instruction, paying an invoice, updating bank details, or completing a scheduled wire transfer. By the time anyone realizes the money has gone to the wrong account, it has usually been moved through several banks and, in many cases, transferred overseas within hours. That speed is what makes business email compromise one of the most financially damaging forms of cyber-enabled fraud today. Like many large fraud operations, this one didn't begin with millions of dollars. It began with a single opportunity. According to federal investigators, members of the network spent time studying how legitimate businesses communicated. They learned how companies approved payments, how invoices were exchanged, and who had the authority to authorize wire transfers. Instead of forcing their way into computer systems, they focused on understanding people and everyday business routines. Once they identified the right target, they waited for the perfect moment. Sometimes they impersonated a supplier expecting payment. Other times they posed as a company executive requesting an urgent transfer. Everything about the message was designed to look ordinary, and that was exactly what made it so dangerous. Imagine arriving at work on a normal Tuesday morning. Your inbox is full, your phone won't stop ringing, and dozens of tasks are waiting for your attention. Then, among all those messages, you receive an email that appears to come from someone you've worked with for years. The message is short and professional. It explains that the supplier has recently changed bank accounts and asks that the next payment be sent to the new account instead. Nothing about it seems unusual. The invoice matches previous orders. The company name is correct. The logo is familiar. Even the writing style feels authentic. Believing everything is legitimate, An employee approves the payment. Within minutes, thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars are transferred. Only later does someone make a phone call to confirm the payment. That's when the truth comes out. The supplier never changed its bank account. The email was fake, and the money is already gone. What made this case so extraordinary wasn't a single fraudulent payment. It was the scale. According to federal prosecutors, the criminal network targeted businesses across the United States and beyond. Victims included manufacturers, law firms, construction companies, and small family-owned businesses that had spent years building their reputations. Each successful attack generated more money, allowing the operation to continue growing. The same techniques were repeated again and again, often with only small changes from one victim to the next. Investigators eventually connected hundreds of fraudulent transactions that appeared unrelated at first. But when the evidence was examined together, a clear pattern emerged. By the end of the investigation, authorities estimated that the scheme had stolen more than $200 million from over 1,000 victims across 47 states and 19 countries. This was no longer a collection of isolated scams. It had become one of the largest business email compromise prosecutions in U.S. history. Stealing the money was only the first step. Keeping it was the real challenge. The stolen funds rarely stayed in one bank account for long. As soon as a payment arrived, it was quickly transferred through multiple accounts, sometimes within minutes. Investigators say the network relied on a chain of bank accounts controlled by different individuals. These accounts helped move the money from one place to another, making it much harder to trace. Some of the money was withdrawn in cash. Some was wired to other countries. Other transfers were broken into smaller amounts to avoid attracting attention. Every transfer added another layer between the criminals and the original victim. By the time the fraud was discovered, the money had often passed through several banks and crossed international borders. Following that trail became one of the biggest challenges facing investigators. By the time the case reached trial, investigators had uncovered something far bigger than a single scammer. According to federal prosecutors, the operation involved 25 convicted participants, each playing a different role in the network. Some members specialized in gaining access to business email accounts or coordinating fraudulent payment requests. Others controlled bank accounts used to receive stolen funds, while additional members helped move the money through multiple transactions designed to hide its origin. During one of the final federal trials, a jury convicted Oluwafemi Michael Awoyemi, Aruan Drake, and Peter Reed for their roles in the conspiracy. Prosecutors argued that they were part of the wider organization responsible for carrying out and laundering proceeds from the business email compromise scheme. But those three were only part of the picture. Court records show that a total of 25 defendants were ultimately convicted in connection with the operation, illustrating just how large and coordinated the network had become. The investigation was no longer about identifying one criminal. It was about dismantling an international organization that had spent years stealing millions of dollars from businesses around the world. For investigators, the challenge wasn't proving that the fraud had happened. The challenge was proving who was behind it. Financial records, email accounts, bank transfers, and digital evidence from multiple countries had to be examined piece by piece. What initially looked like hundreds of separate cases slowly began to connect. Investigators discovered patterns in the movement of money, repeated email techniques, and accounts linked to the same criminal network. Every new piece of evidence revealed another part of the operation. The investigation required cooperation between banks, federal agencies, and international law enforcement partners. It took years of work before prosecutors believed they had enough evidence to bring the case to court. When the arrests finally came, they marked the beginning of the legal battle, not the end of the investigation. After years of investigation, thousands of documents, and countless hours of financial analysis, the case finally reached federal court. Prosecutors presented evidence showing how the criminal network had carried out business email compromise schemes on a massive scale, using fraudulent emails, stolen identities, and a complex web of financial transactions to move stolen funds. Several individuals were convicted for their roles in the operation, while investigators continued working to identify others connected to the network. Cases like this often involve multiple countries, making every arrest only one part of a much larger investigation. Authorities were able to recover some of the stolen money, but much of it had already been transferred through numerous accounts or moved overseas before victims realized they had been targeted. For many businesses, the financial loss was only part of the damage. Operations were disrupted, trust between companies was broken, and years of hard work disappeared in a matter of minutes. The case became a reminder that modern cybercrime doesn't always begin with malicious software or sophisticated hacking. Sometimes it begins with a single email that looks completely ordinary. And that's exactly what makes business email compromise one of the most dangerous financial crimes in the digital age.